Einstein said, "Nature shows us only the tail of the lion, but there is no doubt in my mind that the lion belongs with it, even if he cannot reveal himself to the eye all at once because of his huge dimension." And then Tesla said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secret of this core, but I know it exists." Is the core that Tesla talks about the same as Einstein's lion dimension?
They're talking about the theory of everything. When Einstein looked at the claw, he was talking about gravity. But he said that gravity must be connected to a much greater thing because look at light. Light is different from gravity. The other paw is light. So why should this lion have two paws? There must be a head, there must be a tail and other legs. Tesla, too, was tinkering with this idea that there's something out there. He thought maybe it was a vacuum that contained the secrets of our existence. And now we realize that, well, yes, the vacuum does have energy. It's called dark energy. And that's the energy of the Big Bang. That's what's causing the expanding universe. And so if you understand this energy of nothing, the energy of the vacuum, then in some sense you can understand the deepest secrets of the universe. That is, the unified field theory, which is what I do for a living. It all started when I was 8 years old. They announced that a great scientist had just died, and they flashed a picture of his desk with the unfinished manuscript of his greatest work. Now, I was fascinated by that story. I didn't know who this man was. I just knew that he couldn't finish something. So I said to myself, well, gee, it was a homework problem, right? Couldn't he ask his mother? I mean, what's so hard that you can't finish it? So I said to myself, I want to learn about this man. I want to learn about what he couldn't finish. Then I found out the man's name was Albert Einstein, and he was working on the unified field theory, the theory of everything. And then I went to the library to find out more about the unified field theory, and I found nothing. Not one book to explain to me the unified field theory. So I said to myself, when I grow up and I become a professor of theoretical physics, I want to at least write books for myself, for the kid that I used to be, so that I would be able to access the unified field theory. And that's what I do. I mean, I've written some of the earliest books on string theory. There are 5 different string theories, and each one can be summarized by string field theory. In fact, that equation is my equation. I'm the co-founder of string field theory. 10 dimensions is the dimension I usually work in. However, my equation is about 1.5 inches long. We want to get it down even further. We want to get the theory down to a 1-inch equation and allow membranes to coexist. We now know from the work of people at Princeton that there is an 11-dimensional model out there, and we want to find the reformulation of string theory in terms of 11 dimensions. This is called M theory, M for mystery, magic, or membranes. And that's even a more advanced version of string theory. That's really hard, because in 11 dimensions, they are membranes. And membranes are much more difficult to work with than strings. So right now, some of the brightest minds on Earth are working on M theory to try to find the ultimate formulation of the theory of everything that would allow us to fulfill Einstein's dream of, quote, reading the mind of God.
Would that be considered the end of physics?
Just because you are watching a chess game and you slowly figured out how the pawns move and how the bishops move, that doesn't mean you're a grandmaster. That doesn't mean you're a master of chess. No, it just means you know how the pawns move and how the bishops move. And so I think even if we do have the theory of everything, that's just the beginning. Think of all the questions we can answer with the theory of everything. Is time travel possible? Einstein's equations say yes, but is it really practical? String theory will answer that question. Wormholes. Can we have gateways to other universes? What happened before the Big Bang? Is there a multiverse of universes? All these questions are way beyond Einstein's theory, but that's exactly what string theory can do. String theory in principle can answer these questions about parallel universes, time travel, wormholes, the multiverse. So once we have the unified field theory, that's just the beginning.
Physics is turning into a philosophy because there are a lot of theories that are very difficult or close to impossible to prove. What do you think about that?
Physics should be based on things that are testable reproducible, and falsifiable. However, now we're after bigger game. We're after the theory of everything, the theory of the entire universe. Each solution of string theory is an entire universe. A direct proof of that would require creating a baby universe in the laboratory. In other words, to become God. Now, we can't do that, of course, but look at how science is done. Science is done indirectly. Now, we know, for example, that the sun is made out of hydrogen. How do we know that? How do we know that the sun is made out of hydrogen? No one's been to the sun. We've never sent a space probe to the sun, so how do we know? Because we analyze echoes from the sun called sunlight. And by analyzing sunlight, we know the sun is made out of hydrogen. In the same way, we will prove the correctness of string theory and M theory by looking at echoes from the 11th dimension.
But how can you predict what's coming in the future? I'm just wondering.
Well, I'm a physicist, and I know that you cannot absolutely predict the future. All you can do is predict trends based on what you know of physics. 300 years ago, the average person lived to be about 35 or 40, and it was a hard life. You had kids, and then you died. Life was a bitch back then. In 1900, there was a contest to predict the next 100 years. Some people predicted that we would have blimps, fleets of blimps, to go across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, why were these predictions of 1900 so wrong? What happened? They didn't know that there were four fundamental laws, forces of the universe. Today we know that there are four fundamental forces like gravity, electromagnetism, which makes light bulbs possible, and computers. And then we have the two nuclear forces, the weak and the strong nuclear force, which lights up the sun, for example. We didn't know that in 1900. What happened was, 200 years ago, we physicists worked out the laws of thermodynamics. That made possible the steam engine. And the steam engine made possible the locomotive, factories, and the Industrial Revolution. And then 80 years after that, we physicists worked out electromagnetism, which made possible the electric age. All of a sudden we had dynamos and generators and light bulbs and television. 80 years after that, we physicists invented the computer, the transistor, and the laser beam. And with the transistor, we ushered in the high-tech age. And now, Silicon Valley could become a Rust Belt because one day the transistors of silicon will become obsolete for two reasons, heat and leakage. So when transistors become so small that they're the size of molecules, then molecules leak and molecules create tremendous amounts of energy. The chip will melt as a consequence and short circuit because of leakage. So we physicists are desperately trying to find a way to maintain computer power because we're so used to Moore's law that computer power doubles every 18 months. But as George Harrison once said, all things must pass, even the age of silicon. Technology will go someplace else where we have quantum computers and molecular computers that compute on molecules and compute on individual atoms. We are undergoing the fourth wave of wealth generation. And once again, physics is helping to lead the way into the future. And that is artificial intelligence, biotech, and nanotech. Mark Zuckerberg says that robots are going to open up new pathways for prosperity, jobs, industry, and it'll be beneficial for society. Elon Musk of SpaceX and Tesla Motors says, not so fast. What happens when the robots take over? There could be a huge mistake on the part of humanity. Both are right to a degree. There are billionaires waiting to be minted. I think the robotics industry will be bigger than the car industry because your car will become a robot. You'll talk to your car. You'll argue with your car. You'll ask your car for information, for help. You'll gossip with your car. And so your car will be part of the AI robotics industry. That's how big it's going to be. And so, for example, when you want medical care, you'll talk to RoboDoc. RoboDoc is a software program in your wristwatch that analyzes your body to give you expert advice. RoboLawyer will help you when you're in a car accident and you got to talk to a lawyer if you're traveling in Europe and you don't speak the local language. And so we'll be surrounded by artificially intelligent technologies, and that's going to change the way we function. But let's not be naive. There's a certain point at which robots become dangerous. That point is when they become self-aware. Now, robots do not know they're robots. If you compare them to an animal, they would barely compare to a cockroach. Cockroaches can just barely walk across the room. That's the level of intelligence of most of our robots. However, in the coming decades, robots will become as smart as a mouse, then a rat, then a rabbit, then a cat, then a dog, and finally a monkey. Now, monkeys are self-aware. They know they are not humans. Now, dogs are confused. Dogs think that, well, humans are dogs too. We're the top dog, and they're the underdog, and that's why they obey us. Now, monkeys aren't that stupid. Monkeys know they are not human. But so when robots become as smart as a monkey, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they have murderous thoughts.
If something is self-conscious, wouldn't that thing, whatever it may be, has the right to express itself?
Well, yes and no, but at the present time, robots do not have rights. I think robots will eventually have rights, and that point is when robots suffer pain. You see, pain is very important for us to exist. People who are born without pain sensors usually have their fingers and toes amputated because you take all sorts of risks and do dangerous things and not know it because you have no pain sensors. So eventually robots are going to have pain sensors. They're going to have to feel pain. Otherwise, they're going to try to do feats of superhuman ability and destroy themselves. And so robots will eventually be equipped with pain sensors. At that point, I think we should think about the ethics of robots, because you don't want to make robots suffer unnecessarily. Because if you are a human, yes, there are sadists among us who will want to torture animals and who will want to torture robots once they can feel pain.
Do we really know where our ethics and morality come from? Are ethics and morality objective or subjective and interpreted depending on the individual ability to process information?
I think Galileo said it the best, and he said the purpose of science is to determine how the heavens go. The purpose of religion is to determine how to go to heaven. Religion is about ethics, about how to go to heaven, how to be a good person, the golden rule, how to be nice, how to treat other people nice. And so if you want to know what ethics is, it's relative to the tribe. Whatever holds the tribe together is considered good. And so that's why ethics changes from tribe to tribe. So I think evolutionarily speaking, that religion was good for us, because back in the caveman days, if you were becoming intelligent, you badmouthed the leader. You hijacked the leader. You killed the leader to take over the tribe because you were smarter than him. Intelligence is quite corrosive and quite divisive. You bring 5 people together, you get 6 points of view. And so I think tribes that were based on intelligence fell apart and died. They're not here today. They never left their genes in the gene pool. The genes that survived were the genes of people that had religion, a glue of ethics that held the tribe together. We are descended from them. And so religion is bad if it fosters divisiveness, sectarianism, fundamentalism, but it could be good if it fosters humanitarianism and fosters knowledge and growth. Science is about natural law. It's about discovering the laws of nature. When we discover industry, we discover the 4 fundamental laws, we discover hydrogen warheads, then science has to deal with ethical questions for the first time. It's no longer just creating a science experiment. No, it's destroying the human race. That's the power of science. Many people saw the movie The Matrix, and they thought to themselves, wow, can reality be uploaded into our minds? Is the universe nothing but a simulation? Did God put a CD into a CD player and hit the play button? Once you hit the play button, here we are, acting as if we have free will, acting as if we know what we're doing, but we're just puppets. We're just puppets dancing on the computer screen just because somebody hit the play button. Is that reality? I don't think so, for the following reason. If we were to have a computer to simulate the weather, the computer would have to be enormous in size just because there's so many molecules inside the weather. The smallest object that can simulate the weather is the weather itself. The smallest object that can model the universe is the universe itself. Now that's using Newton's equations, assuming that atoms are hard steel balls. Quantum mechanics says no. Quantum mechanics says that these balls can be everywhere at the same time, which of course violates common sense, but who cares about your common sense? Quantum mechanics makes many more possible universes than Newton's equations. So if Newton's equations cannot be simulated except by Newton's equations themselves, then what chance do we have of doing this with quantum mechanics? So that's why I do not think we are a simulation. We have free will, and we're not marionettes dancing just because somebody hit the play button. And so I think in the early days, we needed religion. Religion and science were dialectical. You could not have intelligent apes without religion keeping the tribe together. That's why if you are a Martian landing on the planet Earth, you'll realize that every society on the planet Earth has a religion. But after a while, you have to learn about science the hard way by making all sorts of mistakes. And things like proving the existence of God is outside of our testability. Therefore, these questions like miracles, angels, gods, and things like that, maybe they exist, maybe they don't. But science says nothing about them because they're not testable, falsifiable, and reproducible.
Is there any big picture objective, or rather a philosophy for science and technology? Could perhaps becoming a type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale be considered the objective?
A type 1 civilization is planetary. They control the weather, for example. They control planetary energy, like Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. Then we have type 2, which is stellar. They control the output of entire stars. They play with stars, like Star Trek. Star Trek would be a typical type 2 civilization. Then there's type 3, which is galactic, which means they control black holes. They control the black hole at the center of the galaxy. They roam the galactic space lanes. Now, what are we on this cosmic scale? Are we controlling the weather? Are we playing with the sun? Do we roam the galactic space lanes? No, we're type 0. We get our energy from dead plants. But we are about 100 years from becoming type 1. For example, what is the Internet? The Internet is the first type 1 technology to land in the 21st century. What language will they speak? Already on the Earth, the two most popular languages on the Internet are English and Mandarin Chinese. And what music will they listen to? Well, we already have a planetary youth music called rock and roll. We already have the Olympics, the planetary sports. We already have the beginning of planetary fashion with Chanel and Gucci. So we're seeing the birth of a planetary culture and a planetary energy source right before our eyes. But this transition is the most dangerous of all. As Elon Musk has said, maybe they're out there, but maybe they blew themselves apart. We are still mired in the swamp. We have all the savagery of our rise from the swamp. We have sectarianism, fundamentalism, anti-sciencism. We have all these horrible isms facing us. Our colleges and high schools do a good job of graduating students to live in 1950. The only problem is we don't live in 1950 anymore. But the curriculum is so stale, so backward, and yet that's what we teach our kids. For example, sometimes I teach physics for pre-med. These are the people who are going to be operating on you using the most advanced MRI scans and PET scans and EKG scans, right? What do I teach them? About MRI scans and PET scans and radio medicine and advanced cancer research? No. The book says I have to teach them about friction, tuning forks, levers, and pulleys. Now, they were important 300 years ago, but are not cutting edge anymore. But that's how we teach physics to medical students. We're into the age of electricity and computers and high tech, but we don't teach that stuff. And so when you go to a laboratory, I talk to the doctors there, they're clueless. They don't know how these things work. They just know that they work. And as a consequence, we've had horrible accidents. Like CAT scans, for example, hit you with a tremendous amount of radiation. It has to be done very carefully by technicians. However, these technicians don't know up from down with the radiation coming from a CAT scan. And there are all these pictures of patients that have lost their hair because of the enormous quantities of X-rays that hit their scalp. I mean, we find these pictures in Hiroshima, but there we have hospitals where the patients look like victims from Hiroshima because the technicians don't know how to calibrate CAT scans. Our worst achievement is our ability to self-destruct, self-inflicted problems like global warming, nuclear proliferation, and germ warfare that could end this great experiment called humanity. But on the positive side, I side with the words of General Eisenhower, who once said that pessimists never win wars. Only optimists win wars. Only optimists change history. So I'm optimistic that once we hit type 1, then we become planetary. It'll usher in an age of Aquarius. And nations, wars will gradually become a thing of the past.
What are some of the most important and crucial science and technology and innovation that we have to reach from now in order to reach type 1 civilization?
First of all, we're all born scientists. We're born wondering why the sun shines. We're born wondering where we came from and why the stars twinkle. Then we encounter the greatest destroyer of scientists known to science. It destroys thousands of scientists. This destroyer of scientists is junior high school. Even as we speak, thousands of junior high school kids have been turned off to science because they're taking their first courses in science, and science is made boring. It's made into memorization. Learn the parts of a flower. I mean, memorize the moons of Jupiter. I mean, who cares? I'm a scientist. I never have to look up the parts of a flower. You just go to the internet, and there it is. In fact, in the future, the internet's going to be inside your contact lens. You'll blink, and you'll be online, and there's the periodic chart. So why should you bother to memorize all the elements of the periodic chart? You have to use the chart, not memorize the chart. We should revamp junior high school, because that's where we lose millions of scientists. We think that humans are Homo sapiens, but we're different from the other creatures on the planet Earth. 99.9% of all species on the Earth have gone extinct. Dig underneath your feet, right underneath your feet, and you'll meet the bones of the 99.9% of species that never made it. Extinction is the norm for all life forms on the planet Earth. Now, we're different. We have a big brain. We can perhaps change our destiny. So our species is unique among all the other species. Because after all, the dinosaurs did not have a space program. And because the dinosaurs did not have a space program, they're not here today to talk about it. They got wiped out when that meteor or comet hit Mexico 65 million years ago. But we do have a big brain. We do have rocket ships. We do have a space program. And so we're in a position to defeat the odds of nature. That nature says all life forms must eventually die, except maybe us. Immortality, or at least partial immortality, is definitely in the cards in two ways. First is digital immortality, and the second is genetic or biologic immortality. Digital immortality is when you digitize everything known about your digital fingerprint. Already in Silicon Valley, there are companies offering, for a price, a form of digital immortality. Everything known about you, your credit card transactions, your Instagram photographs, your emails, everything in your digital fingerprint can be compiled. We can now upload memories. We actually now can photograph dreams. Things that were obviously violating common sense exist freely when you dream because the front part of the brain is shut off. Blood flow to the prefrontal cortex goes to near zero, and that's why your dreams are fantastic. The center part of the brain is the brain of emotion, the monkey brain, the amygdala. That lights up when you dream. But the amygdala also generates nightmares. There are Buddhist textbooks, centuries old, that teach you the method of how to become a lucid dreamer when you actually control the direction of your dream, which we now have verified experimentally in the laboratory. Things that were once considered preposterous about the mind, we now do. In Germany, at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany, they took a lucid dreamer put him in a brain scan, and bingo, he was awake while dreaming, and he could control the direction of his dreams. Further down the line, I think we're going to have BrainNet. I think we'll telepathically communicate with other people. At Berkeley, they put a subject in an MRI scan, have him visualize the Mona Lisa, for example. When you brain scan him, you analyze 30,000 pixels representing blood flow in different parts of the brain, put it in the computer, and bingo, a picture emerges of the Mona Lisa. So that in the future, when you go to the library, instead of getting a book about Winston Churchill, you'll talk to Winston Churchill. All his mannerisms, all his memories, all his speeches will be recorded and digitized. I would love to talk to Einstein. I would love an opportunity to talk to a digitized Einstein that had digitized all his works, all his theories, all his speeches, all his videos, all of it digitized. In fact, I think that you will be able to talk to your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandkids because their ancestors have been digitized. Now, once we digitize you are in some sense immortal. I think we should put it on a laser beam and shoot it into outer space. In 1 second, your consciousness will be on the moon. In 15 minutes, your consciousness will be on Mars. In 4 years, you'll be on Alpha Centauri, the nearest star. I call this laser porting. It's much more efficient than flying saucers. And I think this already exists. I think aliens in outer space probably laser port their consciousness across the galaxy at the speed of light. They don't bother with rockets, with weightlessness, with rocket accidents and cosmic rays and accidents. They don't bother with that. They simply digitize themselves and shoot their consciousness across the galaxy. More than likely, an extraterrestrial civilization will explore the galaxy with robots, self-replicating von Neumann probes that land on the moon. On the moon, they create copies of themselves, and they shoot out to land on other moons and make copies of themselves again from the lunar soil. In that way, from one monolith, you can get 2, then 10, then 1,000, ... an exponential growth of these things, and you can therefore analyze the entire galaxy in 100,000 years. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if on our moon there's evidence of an ancient visitation, because the moon has no rust, no erosion, no water to speak of. It's the ideal place to put a probe, a von Neumann probe, that simply monitors our solar system. We're entering a new golden age of space exploration. The Apollo space program consumed 5% of the entire federal budget. Now that's unsustainable. Now prices are dropping like a rock. When you saw the movie The Martian with Matt Damon, that movie cost $100 million. But the Indians sent a space probe to Mars for $70 million. So you realize the Hollywood movies about going to Mars cost more than actually going to Mars. That's how much prices have dropped. Millions of people tuned in to watch the launching of the Falcon Heavy from Cape Canaveral. Why? It's just an ordinary rocket, for God's sake. We see them take off all the time, right? No. The Falcon Heavy was a moon rocket, fully capable of sending astronauts to the moon. Now, this rocket was paid for not by taxpayers, but by a private individual, Elon Musk of Tesla Motors. Think about that, a private individual, you opening up his checkbook and bankrolling a moon rocket, which could take our astronauts to the moon. The richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, he has created his own spaceport in Texas. He doesn't even bother to go to Cape Canaveral. He shoots his rockets from his own spaceport. And Google billionaires, not to be left behind, they're jumping into the game. They want to mine the asteroid belt. And they, in turn, want to have a return by mining operations when they go to the moon and Mars. Taxpayers don't have to foot the bill. In fact, it takes 3 days to go to the moon, 1 week for a round trip to the moon. I think in the future our grandkids may honeymoon on the moon. Mars, of course, is farther away, but the moon will be for tourists in the future. It's a whole new ballgame out there. Because we have self-consciousness, we are masters of our fate. And I think one possible destiny for us is to become a star-faring species. That is, to reach for the stars.